The day my greedy son and his wife won $53 million in the lottery, they kicked me out with the words, "We don't need your pathetic pension cash anymore. Just go die somewhere else." They went pale when I laughed and said, "Sweetie, did you even read whose name is on that lottery ticket?" If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me backtrack and tell you how we got to this delicious moment of justice. 3 weeks ago, on a gray December morning in Cedar Falls, Iowa, I was doing what I'd done every Friday for 32 years, buying my weekly lottery ticket at Murphy's Corner Store. Same numbers I'd played since 1992. Same ritual, same hopeful little prayer to whoever might be listening upstairs. My name is Dorothy Williams, but everyone calls me Dot. I'm 67, widowed 2 years now, and living in what my daughter-in-law Ashley likes to call our guest room. Though guests usually aren't expected to hand over their entire Social Security check as rent. Morning, Mrs. Williams called Jimmy Murphy from behind the counter. At 25, he still remembered when I used to bring my son Marcus in for penny candy. The usual? You bet. I handed him my $5, watching as he printed my ticket. Those numbers, 7, 14, 23, 31, 45 with Powerball 18. They meant something. 7 for the day I married Harold. 14 for the day Marcus was born. 23 for our wedding anniversary. 31 for the house number where we raised our family. 45 for the years we had together. 18 for Marcus's age when he graduated high school. So proud and full of promise. Back then, I never imagined those numbers would become my weapon of mass destruction. "Cross your fingers for me, Jimmy," I said, tucking the ticket into my purse. "Always do, Mrs. Williams. You're due for some good luck." If only he knew how prophetic those words would be. Walking home through the December chill, I passed the house Harold and I had shared for 43 years. The new owners had painted it yellow. Harold would have hated that. He always said, our white house with black shutters looked dignified, like a place where decent people lived and raised their children with respect and values. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now living with the child I'd raised in that dignified house, and he was treating me like an unwanted burden. Ashley's BMW was in the driveway when I reached what I supposed to call home now. Through the kitchen window, I could see her on her phone, gesturing wildly, probably talking to her sister about their next vacation or complaining about having to share their house with Marcus's ancient mother. I let myself in through the back door, hanging my coat on the hook by the laundry room, the same hook where Marcus used to hang his Little League jersey, where Harold hung his work shirts, where normal families hung their things because they belong somewhere. "Dot, is that you?" Ashley's voice carried that particular edge it got when she was annoyed about something, which was most of the time these days. "Just me," I called back, though I wanted to add, "Sorry for existing in your precious house." But I didn't, because I'd learned over these past 2 years that sometimes survival means keeping your mouth shut and your dignity intact, even when both are getting harder to maintain every day. The day Harold died changed everything, though I didn't realize it at first. Grief has a way of blinding you to the vultures circling overhead, especially when one of them is your own son. Harold's funeral was on a Tuesday in December 2022. The whole thing felt surreal. 45 years of marriage reduced to a 90-minute service and a luncheon with store-bought sandwiches. Marcus gave a lovely eulogy about his father being a good provider and family man. Ashley wore black and dabbed her eyes at appropriate moments, though I'd never seen her cry actual tears over anything that didn't involve her credit card being declined. "Mom, you can't stay in that big house alone," Marcus said as we drove home from the cemetery. "It's not practical." I was staring out the window at the frozen farmland, thinking about how Harold and I used to drive this same route when we were courting. He'd hold my hand and talk about the house we'd buy, the children we'd raise, the life we'd build together. Practical had never been part of those conversations. "I've been managing just fine for 65 years, I replied. "I think I can handle a few more, but the upkeep, the lawn care, the snow removal," Ashley chimed in from the front seat. "At your age, Dot, those things become dangerous. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one finds you for days?" The concern in her voice sounded genuine. I almost believed it myself. "Besides," Marcus added, "we have plenty of room." The guest bedroom hardly gets used, and you could help with the grandkids when they visit. Help with the grandkids. That should have been my first clue. Marcus and Ashley's house was a sprawling colonial in the newer part of town, complete with a 3-car garage and a kitchen island bigger than my first apartment. They'd bought it 5 years earlier, stretching their budget to what Ashley called the absolute limit and what I privately thought was beyond their means. But what did I know? I was just a widow with a paid-off house and 45 years of savings Harold had carefully tucked away. The guest room was nice enough. Pale yellow walls, white furniture, a view of their perfectly manicured backyard. "It'll be like a comfortable hotel," Ashley said, plumping the pillows on the queen-sized bed. "Your own space, but with family nearby." The first month was actually pleasant. I cooked dinner most nights, did the housework without being asked, and kept to myself in my room when Marcus and Ashley needed privacy. They seemed grateful for the help, though I noticed they never offered to pay for groceries or utilities, despite my Social Security check going toward what Ashley euphemistically called household expenses. By the second month, the requests started coming. "Could you watch Emma and Jake this weekend? Ashley and I need some couple time. Could you pick up our dry cleaning? You're already going to the store. Could you handle the cable guy? We're both at work and someone needs to be here." Slowly, efficiently, I was being transformed from house guest to unpaid domestic staff. But I told myself it was temporary, just until I figured out my next move. Just until the grief wasn't so raw. Just until I felt strong enough to live alone again. I should have listened to Harold's voice in my head. The one that always said, "Dorothy, when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them." By summer, the mask had started slipping. Ashley's requests became demands, and Marcus developed a talent for being conveniently absent when conflicts arose. "We need to talk about the financial arrangement," Ashley announced one morning over coffee. She'd laid out papers on the kitchen table like she was conducting a business meeting, which I suppose she was. "What kind of arrangement?" I asked, though my stomach was already sinking. "Living expenses, your share of utilities, food, household maintenance. It's only fair that you contribute proportionally to what you use." The word proportionally should have been my second clue. Ashley had majored in business administration and loved to use corporate terminology to make personal conversations sound official and unavoidable. She slid a paper across the table, an itemized list of monthly expenses with my share highlighted in yellow: $800 for rent of the guest room, $200 for utilities, $300 for food and household supplies. $1,300 total, which happened to be exactly $50 less than my monthly Social Security check. "This seems high," I said carefully. "I'm only one person, and I'm gone several hours each day at the senior center." "But you're using the kitchen, the bathroom, the laundry facilities," Ashley countered. "And when Emma and Jake visit, you're here for the whole weekend, which increases our costs significantly." Emma and Jake were Marcus' children from his first marriage. They visited every other weekend, and I loved having them around. They were 8 and 10, full of energy and questions, and the kind of innocent joy that made me remember why being a grandmother was supposed to be one of life's great rewards. Of course, Ashley had a different perspective on their visits. "It's exhausting having children in the house every other weekend," she told her sister on the phone one day, not realizing I could hear from the laundry room. "And now with here, too, it's like I'm running a boarding house." I signed the financial agreement because what choice did I have? Finding an apartment at my age with only $50 a month left over for personal expenses wasn't realistic. And Marcus seemed genuinely concerned about my welfare, even if his wife viewed me as a profit center. "This is just temporary, Mom," he assured me when I expressed doubt about the arrangement, "until we figure out a long-term plan that works for everyone." The long-term plan, as it turned out, involved me becoming increasingly invisible and increasingly useful. By fall, I was doing all the shopping, most of the cooking, and all of the cleanup. When Emma and Jake visited, I was their primary caretaker, while Marcus and Ashley went out for romantic dinners or weekend getaways. When they entertained Ashley's friends, I was expected to serve drinks and appetizers, then disappear upstairs so the adults could have their sophisticated conversations. The breaking point came in November during one of Ashley's dinner parties. I'd spent the afternoon preparing appetizers and cleaning the house, then served drinks to her guests with a smile plastered on my face. As I was collecting empty glasses from the living room, I overheard Ashley talking to her friend Jennifer. "It's actually worked out perfectly," Ashley was saying. Dot handles all the domestic stuff, watches the kids when they're here, and her Social Security covers most of her expenses. "It's like having live-in help, except she pays us for the privilege." Jennifer laughed. "That's brilliant. You should write a book, How to Monetize Your Mother-in-Law." Standing there with a tray full of dirty glasses, listening to my living situation being discussed like a clever business scheme, something crystallized inside me. This wasn't temporary housing during a difficult transition. This wasn't family helping family through tough times. This was exploitation, pure and simple. But I didn't say anything that night. I just carried the glasses to the kitchen, loaded the dishwasher, and went upstairs to my room. After all, I still had my weekly lottery ticket to look forward to. And sometimes, if you wait long enough, the universe has a way of evening the score. December arrived with an early blizzard and Ashley's announcement that they were converting the basement into a mother-in-law suite for me. She presented this like it was a wonderful upgrade, complete with a small kitchenette and a separate entrance. "You'll have so much more privacy," she explained, spreading architectural drawings across the dining room table. "Your own space, your own entrance, almost like your own apartment." The basement. They wanted to move me to the basement. Marcus hovered nearby, looking uncomfortable but supportive. "The contractor says it'll be finished by spring, and you'll have the kitchenette, so you won't need to use the main kitchen as much." Translation: they wanted to isolate me completely, eliminate even the minimal inconvenience of sharing common spaces with their house guest who paid them $1,300 a month for the privilege. "What if I don't want to move to the basement?" I asked. Ashley's smile tightened. "Well, we've been thinking about that too. This arrangement has been working well, but we're starting to feel like we need our space back as a couple. The basement suite would give you independence while keeping us all close. And if I prefer to find somewhere else to live?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom, we've gotten used to having you here. You're family, but if you wanted to explore other options, we'd understand." Other options. At my age, with $50 a month in discretionary income, my other options were limited to subsidized senior housing with a 2-year waiting list or a studio apartment in the dodgiest part of town. They had me trapped and they knew it. That Friday, I walked to Murphy's corner store with more determination than usual. The snow was falling steadily, coating the sidewalks with a slippery layer of ice that made each step treacherous. But I was beyond caring about treacherous. My whole life had become treacherous. "Rough weather for walking, Mrs. Williams," Jimmy called as I stomped snow off my boots. "I've walked through worse," I replied, pulling my $5 from my purse. "Same numbers as always." As Jimmy printed my ticket, I found myself thinking about those numbers differently. 7 for the day I married Harold, back when I was young and believed in happy endings. 14 for the day Marcus was born, when I thought I was raising a man who would respect and protect his family. 23 for our wedding anniversary, celebrating decades of partnership and mutual support. Maybe it was time for those numbers to represent something new. I tucked the ticket into my wallet right behind Harold's old driver's license that I couldn't bring myself to throw away. "Cross your fingers for me, Jimmy," I said, same as always. "Always do, Mrs. Williams." This could be your week. Walking home through the snow, I passed a group of teenagers sledding down the hill behind the elementary school. Their laughter echoed across the frozen landscape, pure joy without any undercurrent of calculation or manipulation. I remembered Marcus at that age, how he'd spend hours building snow forts and refused to come inside even when his clothes were soaked through and his lips were blue with cold. Where had that boy gone? When had he become someone who could look his mother in the eye and explain why moving her to the basement was really for her own good? Back at the house, Ashley was in the kitchen on the phone with the contractor. "Yes, we need the cheapest options for everything," she was saying. "It doesn't need to be fancy. It's just for one elderly person. Just for one elderly person." That's what I'd become in my son's house. Not Dorothy Williams, who'd raised 2 children and buried one husband and survived 67 years of joys and sorrows and everything in between. Just one elderly person to be managed as efficiently and inexpensively as possible. I went upstairs to my room while I still had an upstairs room and sat by the window watching the snowfall. In my purse, my lottery ticket waited patiently, carrying those familiar numbers that had never let me down, even when everyone else had. Sometimes the universe takes its time preparing justice. But when it arrives completely. The winning numbers were announced Friday night at 10:59 p.m. on Channel 7. I was in bed reading a library book about a woman who inherited a mysterious house when the lottery segment came on during the late news. Tonight's Powerball jackpot was $53 million. The perky blonde anchor announced, the winning numbers are 7, 14, 23, 31, 45, and Powerball 18. For a moment, my brain refused to process what I'd heard. Those were my numbers. My exact numbers, the ones I'd been playing faithfully for 32 years. I fumbled for the remote, rewinding the DVR to hear the announcement again. 7, 14, 23, 31, 45, and Powerball 18. My hands were shaking as I reached for my purse, pulling out the lottery ticket with fingers that suddenly felt arthritic and clumsy. There they were, printed in black and white, 7, 14, 23, 31, 45 PB18. $53 million. I sat there staring at the ticket, waiting for the reality to sink in. After 32 years of hope and $5 investments, I had finally won. Not just one, I had won big. My first instinct was to run downstairs and tell Marcus and Ashley, share the incredible news with family, celebrate this life-changing moment together. Then I remembered where I was sitting and why and how I'd gotten there. In their house, paying them $1,300 a month rent while serving as unpaid domestic help and childcare, scheduled to be moved to the basement in the spring because my presence in their lives had become inconvenient. Maybe I should keep this information to myself for a little while, just until I figured out what winning $53 million meant for my future. I slipped the ticket back into my wallet and turned off the TV. Sleep was impossible, but I lay in the dark for hours thinking. By dawn, I had the beginnings of a plan. Saturday morning arrived with typical chaos. Emma and Jake were visiting for the weekend, which meant Ashley would disappear to get her nails done while I supervised breakfast, entertainment, and general child management. Morning, Ashley said, already dressed in her workout clothes. I'm heading to yoga, then the salon. Can you handle the kids? Of course, I replied, same as always. Marcus was in his office catching up on work emails before his golf game. The children were in the living room, still in their pajamas, arguing about what to watch on TV. It was during this perfectly ordinary Saturday morning chaos that Ashley decided to tidy up the kitchen, which included emptying my purse to look for the grocery store coupons I'd clipped earlier in the week. Where did you put those cereal coupons? She called, rifling through my belongings. They should be in the side pocket, I called back, focused on mediating the TV remote dispute between Emma and Jake. Found them. And oh my goodness, what is this? Something in Ashley's voice made me look up. She was standing by the kitchen counter holding my lottery ticket, her face pale with shock. Did you buy a lottery ticket? My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. I buy one every week. Same numbers for 32 years. Ashley was staring at the ticket like it was radioactive. Do you know what the winning numbers were last night? Before I could answer, she was grabbing her phone, frantically Googling. Oh my God, Marcus. Her shriek brought Marcus running from his office, golf shirt half-buttoned, hair still messy from sleep. What's wrong? Is someone hurt? The lottery ticket. Ashley thrust the ticket at him with trembling hands. Look at the numbers. Look at last night's drawing. Marcus took the ticket, frowning as he read the numbers. His frown deepened as Ashley showed him her phone screen with the winning combination. The silence in the kitchen stretched like taffy, broken only by Emma asking if anyone was going to make pancakes. Finally, Marcus looked up at me, his expression unreadable. Mom, do you realize what this means? I realized exactly what it meant. The only question was whether they did. The next hour was pure chaos, and I watched it all unfold from my seat at the kitchen table like I was viewing someone else's life through a window. Ashley was pacing the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, talking to what sounded like every person in her contact list. 53 million. Yes, million. We won the lottery. We won. That was interesting. Marcus had taken the ticket from Ashley and was examining it like a forensic expert, comparing the numbers on his phone screen over and over. This is real, he kept muttering. This is actually real. Emma and Jake, sensing something momentous was happening, had abandoned their TV dispute and were standing in the kitchen doorway, eyes wide with confusion and excitement. Are we rich now? Emma asked. We're very rich, sweetheart, Ashley said, scooping her up for a spin around the kitchen. We'll never have to worry about money again. I found myself thinking about Harold, wondering what he would make of this scene. Probably something wry about chickens counting themselves before they hatched. Harold had always been cautious about assuming outcomes before understanding all the variables. Mom, Marcus said, still clutching the ticket. We need to call a lawyer and a financial advisor and probably an accountant. There are taxes to consider and claiming procedures and we should probably call that contractor and upgrade the basement plans. Ashley interrupted. I mean, if we're millionaires, we don't need to go with the cheapest options anymore. The basement again. Even in the midst of what they thought was life-changing good fortune, they were still planning to move me to the basement. Actually, Ashley continued, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she was working through a problem. We should probably think bigger than the basement. I mean, with this kind of money, we could buy a bigger house, something with a proper mother-in-law wing, or... Her voice brightened. We could look into one of those nice senior communities for Dot, the expensive ones where they have activities and medical care and everything. There it was. The money was going to buy them a more elegant way to get rid of me. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. That's a great idea, Mom. You'd probably be happier with people your own age, right? And we could afford one of the really nice places now. I watched my son and daughter-in-law make plans for my future, using money they assumed belonged to them to solve a problem they'd created by treating me like an inconvenience. The irony was so perfect it almost made me laugh. There's just one small detail we should probably address, I said quietly. Both of them turned to look at me, expressions expectant and slightly impatient, like parents listening to a child who was interrupting adult conversation. The lottery ticket, I continued calmly, is in my name. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the shocked silence of unexpected good news. This was the horrified silence of people realizing they'd made a terrible assumption. What do you mean? Ashley asked slowly. I held out my hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Marcus placed the ticket in my palm. I mean, I said, looking down at the familiar numbers that had just transformed from hope into power, that I bought this ticket with my money, from my purse, using the numbers I've played for 32 years, which makes it mine. Ashley's face went through several fascinating color changes. But you live here. We're family. That money, it changes everything for all of us. No, I said, standing up from the kitchen table with more dignity than I'd felt in 2 years. It changes everything for me. The look of dawning realization on their faces was something I knew I'd treasure for years to come. The moment they understood that their unpaid housekeeper, their soon-to-be basement dweller, their convenient source of monthly rent money, had just become independently wealthy, and they were about to find out that $53 million could buy a lot more than a nice house. It could buy freedom. It could buy justice. And it could buy the most satisfying revenge a mother had ever served to ungrateful children. The kitchen fell so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming and Emma whispering to Jake in the living room. Marcus and Ashley stood frozen, like someone had just announced that gravity was optional. Mom, Marcus said carefully, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Yes, technically the ticket is in your name, but we're family. We share things. We support each other. I almost laughed out loud. Support each other? Like when they supported me by charging me $1,300 a month to live in their guest room, or when they supported me by planning to move me to the basement. You're absolutely right, I said sweetly. We do support each other, which is why I've been supporting you with my Social Security check every month while doing all your housework and childcare for free. Ashley's business brain was working overtime. I could see it in her eyes. She was calculating, strategizing, looking for an angle. Honey, she said, using the voice she reserved for her most important clients. I think there's been a misunderstanding about our living arrangement. The monthly contribution you make, that's not rent. That's just your share of household expenses. We've never thought of you as a tenant. Is that so? I tucked the lottery ticket back into my wallet with deliberate care. Then I suppose you won't mind if I stop contributing to household expenses immediately since I'm family, not a tenant. Marcus stepped forward, hands raised like he was dealing with a potentially dangerous animal. Mom, let's all take a breath here. This is huge news. Life-changing news. We need to think through the implications carefully. Oh, I've been thinking, I said, for about 8 hours now since I saw those numbers last night, and I've come to some interesting conclusions. Ashley's fake smile was starting to crack around the edges. What kind of conclusions? Well, for starters, I concluded that $53 million is enough money to live very comfortably for the rest of my life without depending on anyone else for housing. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. You're not serious, Ashley whispered. You wouldn't just leave. Not after everything we've done for you. Everything they'd done for me. Like taking my money every month while treating me like hired help. Like planning to move me to the basement because my presence in their lives had become inconvenient. Like discussing my living situation at dinner parties as if I were a clever business investment. I'm very serious, I said. In fact, I'm planning to call the lottery office first thing Monday morning to claim my prize, and then I'm going to start looking for a place of my own. Marcus was starting to panic. I could see it in the way he kept running his hands through his hair. Mom, you can't make decisions like this when you're emotional. This is too big, too complicated. You need help managing this kind of money. From who? You. Yes. From us. We're your family. I looked at my son. Really looked at him and saw a stranger. When had Marcus become someone who thought I was too incompetent to manage my own affairs? When had he decided that being my child gave him rights to my choices? Marcus, I said quietly, when your father was dying, do you know what he made me promise? Both of them went very still. He made me promise that I wouldn't let anyone take advantage of my kindness. He said people would try, especially family, because they'd assume I was too polite or too weak to stand up for myself. The silence stretched until Ashley finally cleared her throat. I think you're overreacting to what was basically a miscommunication. Am I? I reached into my purse and pulled out a small notebook. Let me share some numbers with you. Over the past year, I've paid you $15,600 in household expenses. I've provided approximately 1,200 hours of unpaid childcare. I've done roughly 800 loads of laundry, cooked about 300 meals, and cleaned this house from top to bottom every week. Ashley's face was getting redder with each number. In return, you've given me a guest room that you're planning to relocate to the basement and the privilege of listening to you discuss my living arrangements as entertainment for your dinner parties. That's not fair, Marcus protested. We've provided you with a home. You've provided me with room and board in exchange for payment and labor that exceeds what you provided by about $20,000. That's not generosity, son. That's exploitation. The word hung in the air like smoke. And now, I continued, standing up and smoothing my sweater, I have the resources to explore other options. Sunday morning arrived with Ashley in full crisis management mode. She'd obviously spent the night strategizing because she greeted me at the breakfast table with a 3-ring binder and her most professional smile. I've been doing some research, she announced, opening the binder to reveal printed articles about lottery winners. Did you know that 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within 5 years? I poured myself coffee and settled in to watch the show. Is that so? Absolutely. The statistics are terrifying. Poor financial decisions, bad investments, family members taking advantage. It's a complete disaster for most people. She flipped through pages of highlighted text. That's why you need professional guidance. Family guidance. Marcus appeared in the doorway, looking like he hadn't slept well. Mom, Ashley's right. This is way too big for any one person to handle alone, especially someone your age, Ashley added helpfully. No offense, but managing $53 million requires expertise in tax law, investment strategy, estate planning. It's incredibly complex. I took a sip of coffee and studied their earnest faces. They'd clearly spent considerable time preparing this intervention, working out their talking points and strategy. It was almost touching how much effort they were putting into convincing me I was incompetent. You've given this a lot of thought, I observed. We care about you, Marcus said. We don't want to see you make mistakes that could ruin your financial security. What kind of mistakes? Ashley leaned forward, sensing an opening. Well, for instance, buying a house without understanding the tax implications or making large purchases without considering how they affect your long-term cash flow or trusting the wrong people with your money. The wrong people, I repeated, like who? Like financial advisors who charge huge fees or investment managers who push risky products or family members who might try to take advantage of your generosity, Ashley said, apparently without any sense of irony. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate precision. Ashley, let me ask you something. When I moved in here, did you research the average cost of assisted living facilities in our area? Her eyes flickered with something that might have been guilt. What do you mean? I mean, did you look up what it would cost me to live somewhere else so you could price my room and board competitively? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we never thought of it that way. Because I did some research myself yesterday, I continued. The average cost of a private room in a quality assisted living facility around here is about $1,800 a month. That includes meals, housekeeping, activities, and medical support. Ashley was very quiet now. You've been charging me $1,300 for a guest room and the privilege of doing my own housework, cooking, and childcare. That's not family helping family. That's a business arrangement, and not even a fair one. It's not about money, Marcus said desperately. It's about family, about staying together. Is it? Then why were you planning to move me to the basement? Neither of them had an answer for that. I closed Ashley's binder and slid it back across the table. I appreciate your concern about lottery winners going bankrupt, but I think you're worried about the wrong person making poor financial decisions. Ashley's professional composure was starting to crack. What's that supposed to mean? It means that in the past year, I've been subsidizing your lifestyle to the tune of about $20,000. Meanwhile, you've been planning home renovations, taking vacations, and buying new furniture while charging your elderly mother-in-law market rate rent for substandard accommodations. Marcus looked genuinely confused. Substandard? Mom? This is a nice house. With no privacy, no independence, and a landlord who treats me like domestic help. I stood up from the table. But that's all about to change. Where are you going? Ashley asked sharply. To call my lawyer. The look of panic that crossed both their faces was something I'd remember for a long, long time. By Monday afternoon, news of my lottery win had spread through Cedar Falls like wildfire. Jimmy Murphy had apparently put 2 and 2 together when he saw the winning numbers announced, and by noon, there were 3 news vans parked outside Marcus and Ashley's house. I watched from my bedroom window as reporters knocked on the front door, asking for interviews with the mystery millionaire. Ashley had taken to answering the door with her hair perfectly styled and her brightest smile, clearly hoping to be featured in the coverage. Mrs. Williams is resting and not available for comment right now, she told the Channel 7 reporter. But as her family, we're just so excited for this blessing in all our lives. All our lives. That phrase was becoming Ashley's favorite. My phone had been ringing constantly since 10 a.m. Old friends from church, former coworkers from the insurance office where I'd worked before retirement, even my cousin Patricia from Minnesota. Everyone wanted to congratulate me, share in my excitement, and inevitably ask what I was planning to do with the money. What I was planning to do was meet with David Richardson, the lawyer Harold and I had used for our wills and estate planning. David was expecting me at 2 o'clock, and I was looking forward to the conversation. You can't leave the house right now, Ashley said, intercepting me as I headed for the front door with my purse and car keys. There are reporters everywhere. They'll mob you. I have an appointment, I replied calmly. Can't it wait? At least until the media attention dies down. Marcus appeared beside his wife, both of them blocking my path like concerned bodyguards. No, it can't wait. Mom, be reasonable. You're not equipped to handle this kind of media circus. Let us help you navigate this. Navigate, another one of Ashley's corporate terms. I've been navigating my own life for 67 years, I said. I think I can manage a walk to my car. But when I opened the front door, I understood their concern. There were indeed reporters crowding the front yard, cameras and microphones at the ready. The moment they saw me, they surged forward like a pack of excited puppies. Mrs. Williams, how does it feel to win $53 million? What are you planning to do with the money? Is it true you've been playing the same numbers for over 30 years? I paused on the front step, looking out at the sea of expectant faces. Behind me, I could feel Marcus and Ashley hovering, probably hoping I'd retreat back into the house, where they could continue their campaign to manage my newfound fortune. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and walked down the front steps with as much dignity as I could muster. I'm very grateful for this blessing, I told the reporters, stopping beside my car. As for what I'm planning to do with the money, I'm going to use it to live independently and make my own choices for the first time in 2 years. What do you mean by that, Mrs. Williams? I looked back at the house where Marcus and Ashley stood, framed in the doorway, and something settled into place inside me. Something that felt like clarity and strength and long overdue honesty. I mean that sometimes in life you discover that the people you trust most have been taking advantage of your kindness, and sometimes the universe gives you the resources to do something about it. The reporters sensed a story brewing, pressing closer with their microphones. Can you elaborate on that? I've been living with my son and daughter-in-law for the past 2 years, paying them $1,300 a month in rent while providing unpaid domestic and child care services. They were planning to move me to their basement because my presence in their main living space had become inconvenient. I could hear Ashley's sharp intake of breath from the doorway, but now that I have the means to live independently, I'll be finding my own place, somewhere I can be a guest when I visit. My son rather than a paying tenant in his home. Are you saying your own family was taking advantage of you financially? I looked directly into the nearest camera, thinking about all the other elderly people who might be watching, people who might be in similar situations with their own families. I'm saying that family should be about love and respect, not business arrangements. And I'm saying that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, no matter what your age. The questions came faster after that, but I'd said what I needed to say. I got into my car and drove away, leaving Marcus and Ashley to deal with the media circus I'd just created. In my rearview mirror, I could see Ashley frantically trying to manage the situation, probably spinning some story about misunderstandings and family dynamics. But the truth was already out there being broadcast across 3 counties, and I was just getting started. David Richardson's law office was a welcome refuge from the media chaos. At 75, David had the kind of calm, methodical approach that came from 40 years of helping people navigate life's complications. "Dorothy," he said, rising from behind his desk with a warm smile. "Congratulations. Harold would be so proud." "Thank you." I settled into the familiar leather chair where Harold and I had sat so many times discussing wills and insurance policies and all the practical details of a shared life. "I saw the news coverage," David continued, his expression growing serious. "Quite a statement you made to those reporters. Was it too much?" "Not at all. Sometimes the truth needs to be spoken plainly." He opened a file folder and pulled out a yellow legal pad. "Now, let's talk about protecting your interests. Have you claimed the prize yet?" "I'm planning to drive to Des Moines tomorrow to meet with the lottery officials." "Good. I'd recommend taking the annuity rather than the lump sum for tax purposes, and we'll need to set up some trusts, maybe a charitable foundation if you're interested in philanthropy." We spent the next hour discussing financial strategies, tax implications, and estate planning. David explained everything in terms I could understand, never once suggesting that the decisions were too complex for me to comprehend. It was while we were discussing living arrangements that David dropped his own bombshell. "Dorothy, there's something I need to tell you. Something Harold made me promise to keep confidential unless specific circumstances arose." My stomach tightened. "What kind of circumstances?" "If your family ever tried to take advantage of you financially." David opened another file, this one thick with documents. Harold was more aware of Marcus and Ashley's situation than you realized. What do you mean? He knew they were living beyond their means. He also suspected they were already planning to have you move in with them after his death, not out of love, but out of financial necessity. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Harold knew. He hired a private investigator to look into their finances about 6 months before he died. He was worried about what would happen to you. David pulled out a folder of documents. Marcus and Ashley are in significant debt, Dorothy, credit cards, car loans, their mortgage is underwater. They've been living on borrowed money for years. I stared at the papers, seeing columns of numbers that painted a picture of financial recklessness and desperation. Harold wanted you to have this information if you ever needed it to protect yourself, David continued. He also wanted you to know about the insurance policy. What insurance policy? David smiled sadly. The one he took out specifically to ensure you'd have resources if Marcus and Ashley became a problem. $500,000 paid directly to a trust account in your name. It's been sitting there earning interest for 2 years, waiting for you to need it. $500,000. Harold had been protecting me from beyond the grave. He knew, I whispered. He knew this would happen. He loved you enough to prepare for it. David closed the file gently. The question now is what you want to do with this information. I thought about Marcus standing in the doorway that morning, blocking my path while insisting he only wanted to help me. I thought about Ashley with her binders full of statistics about lottery winners going bankrupt, positioning herself as my savior while she'd been bleeding me dry for 2 years. I thought about Harold, who'd spent his final months not just fighting cancer, but fighting to protect me from our own son. David, I said finally, I want to have a family meeting. Tonight. I want Marcus and Ashley to understand exactly what their financial situation looks like and exactly how much their mother-in-law knows about it. Are you sure? Once you reveal this information, there's no going back. I stood up from the leather chair, feeling stronger and more determined than I had in years. David, I've spent 2 years being treated like a convenient source of income by people who were supposed to love me. My husband saw this coming and tried to protect me. I think it's time Marcus and Ashley learned what happens when you underestimate a Williams woman. The look of admiration in David's eyes told me everything I needed to know. Harold would indeed be proud. The family meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. I'd spent the afternoon preparing with David's help, organizing documents, and planning exactly what I needed to say. Marcus and Ashley thought they were coming to discuss my emotional outburst with the reporters and find a way to manage the media attention going forward. They had no idea they were walking into a reckoning. Ashley arrived first, armed with printed articles about lottery winners who'd been swindled by family members and a laptop full of spreadsheets showing how they could properly manage my windfall. Marcus brought a bottle of wine and his most conciliatory expression. Mom, about what you said to those reporters, Marcus began as they settled into the living room. We understand you were overwhelmed. I wasn't overwhelmed, I interrupted calmly. I was finally telling the truth. Ashley opened her laptop with practiced efficiency. We've prepared a comprehensive financial plan that addresses all your concerns while ensuring your long-term security. Before we discuss my financial security, I said, reaching for the folder David had given me, I think we should discuss yours. I placed the first document on the coffee table between us. Marcus glanced down at it, and the color drained from his face. What is this? Ashley asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. It's a complete financial profile of your household, compiled by a private investigator your father hired before he died. I watched both of them go very, very still. He was worried about what would happen to me after his death. So, he did some research into your circumstances. Marcus was staring at the papers like they might catch fire. Dad hired an investigator to spy on us? To protect me, which as it turns out was necessary. I pulled out another document. You owe $47,000 in credit card debt across 6 different cards. Your mortgage is underwater by $32,000. You have 2 car loans totaling $18,000. And Ashley, your business has been operating at a loss for 8 months. Ashley's professional composure cracked completely. How dare you invade our privacy? The same way you invaded mine when you decided I was too incompetent to manage a lottery ticket I bought with my own money. I kept my voice level almost conversational. For 2 years, you've been using my Social Security payments to service your debt while positioning me as a grateful dependent who should be thankful for your generosity. Marcus found his voice. Mom, everyone has financial challenges. Not everyone charges their widowed mother $1,300 a month to live as unpaid domestic help while planning to move her to the basement. I placed another document on the table. This is a breakdown of what my living situation has actually cost me versus what it would cost to live independently. You've been overcharging me by about $600 a month while extracting approximately $1,500 worth of unpaid labor. The silence that followed was profound. That's over $25,000 a year you've been taking from me, I continued. $50,000 over 2 years from your own mother, while you were planning to isolate me further by moving me to your basement. Ashley was crying now, but I noticed they were the kind of tears people cry when they're caught, not when they're sorry. We never meant for it to be like that, Marcus said desperately. We needed help and you were family and you thought I was too old and too grateful to figure out what you were doing. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in months. But your father knew. He saw through both of you, and he made sure I'd have the resources to protect myself when I finally realized what was happening. I placed the final document on the table. This is notification of a trust fund Harold established for me 2 years ago. $500,000 earning interest, waiting for me to need it. He also left instructions with David Richardson to monitor your financial situation and intervene if necessary. Marcus was shaking his head like he could make the truth disappear. I don't understand. Dad never said anything, because he hoped he was wrong about you. He hoped that when the time came, you'd treat me with the love and respect he'd taught you to show family. I picked up my purse and headed for the door. Instead, you treated me like a business opportunity. Where are you going? Ashley called after me. To start my new life. I've put a deposit on a beautiful apartment at Meadowbrook Senior Community. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, my own car space, and a monthly fee that's less than what I was paying to be your tenant. I paused at the front door, looking back at the 2 people who'd taken advantage of my grief and loneliness for their own financial gain. Oh, and one more thing. Since you'll no longer have my income to help with your expenses, you might want to start planning how you'll manage that $47,000 in credit card debt. I hear financial stress can be very challenging for families. As I walked out to my car, I could hear Ashley crying and Marcus trying to calm her down. But their crisis was no longer my problem. I had $53 million, a dead husband who'd loved me enough to protect me from beyond the grave, and the rest of my life to live on my own terms. Harold always said that justice delayed wasn't justice denied, just justice with better timing. Turned out he was right about that, too. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.